Aperture Priority, show number 13, smartphone photography.
Welcome to the Aperture Priority Podcast, an Avila Studios production where it's all about photography and fun. Now open up that aperture and let some creative light in.
Hello and welcome to Aperture Priority, show number 13, the lucky 13. The first previous version, I had a bad card. So, my name's Tony Avila, and again with me today, I have Mr. Joe Engelbrecht.
Greetings, everyone.
So, Joe, any fun new projects have you been working on?
Well, I got a couple things I'm working on. One I'm excited about is that our photography group is working on a project that's called I Love Visalia, our hometown. And in the month of February, we're going to display our vision or our hometown through our eyes, through the 7 or 8 individual photographers that make up the group that are participating. And that's going to be an exhibit that's going to be interesting to see. You know, I made the comment that, you know, we live in a beautiful state. We're surrounded by incredible natural beauty with Sequoia National Park right up the hill from us, and Kings Canyon, and all the sequoias, Yosemite, and then you just jump over the mountains and you're into the east side where you have Mono Lake and Bodie and Alabama Hills, and it's world famous. And here it is in our backyard that we sometimes get jaded as to our little hometown here. Mm-hmm. And we drive up and down the street. So a friend of mine was in town. He's moving here, and his family was here, and I had the pleasure of driving him around our hometown, and they were glued to the windows going ooh and ah about our little town. And I'm thinking, wow, I mean, I'm seeing the town through their eyes again. Mm-hmm. And I go, this is a cool place, and we should really celebrate that. So that's a project that we're working on.
Yeah, it's gonna be challenging because I think so many times they're like, okay, Fox Theater.
Yeah, okay, Fox Theater and
into the trail statue.
And maybe the post office, courthouse,
yes.
Then the list gets a little harder.
Yes. So you kind of have to really challenge yourself and think outside the box.
Exactly. So that's the fun part about it is that, we have the standard stuff. Every hometown has a couple of landmarks, right?
Right.
But what about how can you display the quality of life that you have in your hometown? So maybe that's something our listeners would like to do is revisit and look at their hometown through new eyes and put together as if they were visiting there as a tourist, what they like about their hometown.
Yes. I think, was it Scott Kelby who used to do these events like once a year? You would get all these photo groups and they would go walking around their towns.
Yes, I think that's still happening.
Yeah, I did it once here with the group in Visalia, and it was challenging. We were on East Main Extension, and it was like, well, what's out here? Oh, well, you challenge yourself.
Exactly.
So, that sounds like fun. Me, I finally downloaded Capture One. I did download the Capture One Express for Fuji, and that was on my bucket list this year. I had this love-hate relationship with Photoshop, and I'm just finding a different way to do my raw images because of my Fuji X-Trans sensor on my X-T1. It's a little bit different from your bare pattern.
Right.
So it takes a different type of editing, not editing, but raw conversion because of that X-Trans. And I don't think Adobe's, it's better. But what I've heard, Capture One does a good job, and another program called Iridiant Developer. But I wanted to dive into Capture One because I have a couple of friends that use it, and they tell me, no, Tony, this is what you need to use. So I kind of intrigued. You say something to me, it's like, what makes that good? Mm-hmm. So I've been so far pleasantly surprised by it. I like the quality, but because it's the Express, it's not the full version. I still need to go then into Photoshop and do my other edits, which kind of leads to today's
I was just looking
question.
I was looking at the mailbag, and one of the questions that keeps popping up is, frankly, is the subscription for Adobe products worth the price? Now, in the photographic world, I think it's like $9.99 a month for Lightroom, Photoshop, and Bridge. And then they have some other freebies in there, but those are the core group for $9.99. But for a graphic artist such as yourself, you need to add to that, InDesign and Illustrator. So what is that costing?
That jumps up to like $53 a month.
That's a little bit more coin than $10.
Right. And the frustrating thing for me is, since basically Adobe started off as graphic design suite of tools, it's kind of like, did you guys forget about us? It's like, cut us a deal. I do not, if they would price it, I do not need Premiere and the audio one. I think it's called, I forget what it's called, and all these other ones. After Effects is great, but I'm not doing video.
Right.
Just give me one more price for, or maybe let me do an a la carte. I need these three for
Wouldn't
this
that be
price.
great?
That'd be great. But it is what it is. But on the flip side, I did like what they did for the iPad when they make this new Photoshop. And when I saw the demo of it, of the lady was working with a 3 gigabyte file.
That is impressive.
And everything was smooth, no lag. And I was thinking, this is the future that I envisioned that I want to be working on, because my background was art. And then when I went to graphic designing on the computer and drawing on the computer, you went from a pen, pencil, paintbrush to a mouse.
Right.
And that was the culture shock. Everybody in my class would gripe. But now you have something that's more natural, your pencil working on this thing you're holding in your hand. And they made the iPad Pro lighter again and small and thinner, which keeps blowing my mind. But now it's more comfortable to hold, and I think it's more natural. And now that I'm kind of in a conundrum. Do I go for the iPad Pro? Because now the new, is it the CS 2019?
Yeah. CC 2019. Right.
I can't run on my old Mac Pro.
The operating system, right?
Yeah. So it's like, new Mac. Do I go iPad? Yeah. It's like, but what I can't say, it's still the industry standard.
It is the Microsoft Office of photo editing. It's ubiquitous. There's a tremendous intellectual database out there. I mean, if you want to know how to do something on Photoshop, you go to YouTube, and 55 YouTubes later, you are now an expert on that particular procedure. But I guess the question boils down to, and it always comes back to what is the end purpose of your photography for me? If you're going to just not sell your work or enhance it significantly or want control, if you're completely satisfied with automated enhancements, photo editing, now Photoshop is not worth your time or trouble, because there's some serious learning curve to managing your files, storing them, and then editing them in Photoshop, and that whole workflow. There's some serious learning involved there. This is, you are either a very, very serious hobbyist or a professional. No question, Photoshop should be in your repertoire.
Oh, yeah. If
you're not doing those things, I think there's some other products out there that might serve you better.
Right. And I think of what our friend Larry Lewis can do when he stitches these photographs. And he's so good at that. And Photoshop it's how it lines things up. It's some of his work. It's just mind blowing. And you look at it, this is beautiful and seamless.
Panoramics are very easy to do now. Yeah, exactly. But he's a professional photographer. He sells his work. He goes on out on these field trips and comes back and produces some amazing work. Absolutely.
Yes.
So if you're not going to be selling your work or that serious about it, do elements. Go to the store, Walmart or wherever, Costco, Sam's, and buy Photoshop elements. Or maybe On One has a great raw editor. Right. It's not a subscription. You pay a price and you own it.
You own it. Yeah, that's true. I do like On One. I think I've kind of moved away from it. It's because, again, it's the Fuji files because of that X-Trans filter.
Well, you're a special case, my friend. Yes, I'm sorry.
That is true.
You're
just
like
one camera.
1% of the world has that. Everyone else is a bear, and I don't know what to tell you.
That's true. It's like you had to make that sensor, didn't you?
You had to. I mean, come on, Fuji, help me out here.
But leading in today's show subject, smartphone photography. I'm seeing more and more people just using smartphone, even people who challenge themselves and use the smartphone. And I've seen some great stuff, street stuff.
Mm-hmm. And
I was talking to you earlier. There's a company that I've used called Whitewall. To make images. That's
the one in Germany?
That's one in Germany. And the first time my friend Johnny had gotten this beautiful acrylic print, and I go, "Where'd you get that?" I'd never seen anything around here, and told me about it. So I went to their site, and it's really neat. They got videos on how they work and that German perfection, and everything they do. It's just like it's going to be good. Yeah. It's going to be good. But when I was going through and checking prices, it has all the sizes. Some of the sizes were really intriguing me. He's like, what kind of format's that? And I couldn't grasp it at first. Other than you have your 4x6, 5x7, blah blah blah. But these other sizes, then I knew what they were talking about. It's sizes that come natively off of the sensor on your smartphone.
Oh, I see. Of course.
And I did see. I can't remember if it was my friend John, but somebody sent a image from their smartphone, and I can't remember what size it was that it came out, but all I remembered, I was stunned. The image, it was like, if you put a DSLR next to it at that size, and again, I'm not talking small. I was floored. I couldn't tell that this was shot from a smartphone.
Right.
I figured, okay, somebody went out with their Nikon to the coast and took this scenic. No, it's from a smartphone.
Right. So the question is, are smartphones causing the death of the DSLR? Or in a previous show, we talked about mirrorless perhaps being the stake in the heart of DSLRs. So what is it about DSLRs that everyone's taking these shots at? I mean, come on. What did it ever do to you to cause this kind of angst and venom? But cell phones, again, going back to the preposition, what do you want to do with your photography? If you're going to produce an image and then it's only ever going to be consumed on another phone or a tablet or a monitor, electronic device of some kind, hey, it'd be tough for me to argue for a DSLR in your world. Even the entry level is $500-$600. Now, having said that, I also realize that if you were to go out and buy Google's new Pixel 3 or the iPhone 10, that you're going to plump down $1,000, right?
Right.
Well, if you're going to put together $1,000 and that's your camera, you're spending some serious coin on a camera. So I begin to wonder now if the cell phone or the smartphone is where you should stop, because if you're that serious about your photography. So the cell phones, again. So the question is, if you take the high-end smartphone cameras like the Pixel 3 or the iPhone 10, they've done some amazing work with the optics. I think of the iPhone has two lenses. It has a wide and a telephoto, right? Mm-hmm. And they have an interesting way of creating a merge between the two, where you can create some kind of a bouquet, or is it bokeh?
Oh yeah.
Well, is it tomato or tomato?
Yes. It's the same argument. Yes.
So you can create this quasi-looking bouquet. Again, it's not going to be up to what a DSLR with a nice shallow depth of field looks like, but it's okay. So the cell phones have some serious drawbacks. They absolutely are lousy in low light. The best of them cannot approximate what even a crop sensor DSLR can do. And that's the point, is that if you're serious about your photography, at some point you're going to feel the need to expand your horizons and get a camera that has a larger sensor, because the sensors in these modern cameras, or cell phones, is about the size of the end of a pencil eraser. On the old number 2s that you take to school. That's about how big they are. They're pretty small. That's less than the size of your pinky fingernail. Conversely, a modern or a Nikon D850 has a full frame sensor that's 36 by 24 millimeter. Same thing with the full frames from Canon and Sony. And that thing is bigger than a large postage stamp. I mean, it's compared to that pencil eraser, it is significantly larger. So that's why DSLRs can perform so much better in low light. And and low light is inside the interior of a home. They're better at the noise. They're better at the color bleeding in the noise, the chromatic aberration of the lens. All that stuff is really noticeable in smartphone photography, just because of the physics of the sensor and the lens. Now, what's really interesting, and you brought this up, is that the manufacturers, Google, Apple, and Samsung, knowing the limitations of the hardware, have made improvements in the processing behind that,
right,
and are able to compensate for a lot of in noise reduction or in color correction. They're doing a better and better job. So even though the hardware is not capable of taking that picture in the low light, the software can help improve that dramatically. So that's a couple things. Also, and I've done these tests. In fact, I just got back from a trip to Bodie and the historic mining ghost town, and also in the Yosemite Valley there. And I brought my smartphone with me and my camera. I was shooting an 810 this time, Nikon D810. And I purposely shot the same scene with both my, and it's a mid-range, it's not top of the line cell phone, and my 810. And I know that's not a fair comparison, but let me tell you, it's not a fair comparison at all, because the picture quality was dramatically different. If I were to take that print from the phone and blow it up to anything bigger than an 8x10 or I might get a 16x20 out of it. But if I really wanted to make anything bigger, I would really notice the drop in quality.
Right. And there's something that's going on. And again, it's the software. Like when you send in these images to Whitewall,
right?
They're doing something in their print rip or the software algorithms that it's getting that image that was captured from your smartphone, and it's making a very good image. The one thing you're right about the sensors is just the size. If the Sony A7 S2, I think they haven't come out with the 3. While it's known to do good in low light, it's 24 megapixel. And I think the Nikon, it's almost the same sensors, the Nikon D750.
Right. At
24 megapixels, I think the mirrors are bigger.
So
which is better at capturing the light.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen shots. Some of my friends, when we go out and do astro work, I look at it, there's no noise.
Right.
So on your smartphone, you're going to have to rely more on the software.
Right.
Will there be a day that they probably get it right? Well, the way it's going to, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
see, and that's actually transferable to DSLRs, because if you can improve an image from a sensor the size of your pinky nail, what could you do with the image from a large sensor that dwarfs that the cell phone is dwarfed by? So the software are making great strides in that, and so some of the advantages that the DSLRs have over them are, the telephoto, the lens.
Right.
Most smartphones, all smartphones for that matter, have a pretty wide angle of view, right?
It's
22 millimeter
22
or I mean, that's pretty much standard. So what is that designed for? For selfies.
Right.
Right.
Out and about, family functions. Right.
It's casual photography. It isn't, it can be serious. Don't get me wrong. And you can take some pretty, as you pointed out, some pretty amazing photographs with a smartphone, landscapes, anything that you would use a 14 millimeter lens on your DSLR would be a great candidate for cell phones. But for me, getting back to that for a moment, they also produce RAW files now.
Right.
You can import those into your aforementioned Photoshop and Lightroom and on one RAW editing, and you can edit them and all this other thing. But if you have a $1,400 lens hanging on the front of your DSLR, it's got to produce a better image.
Yes.
So
it better,
right? Well, and there's a downside to this whole thing about cell phones. I mean, how many? We just had a recent tragedy in Yosemite a month ago or so, where a young couple fell to their death from Taft Point, which is a famous a point up by the Glacier Point overview. It's iconic. You'd recognize it in a heartbeat if you saw it. A lot of marriage proposals are done there, for example. This couple from India were taking selfies, and they're bloggers. And ironically, they had just blogged a few months ago about the dangers of selfies on cliffs. So how many deaths do you think have occurred when someone's holding a cell phone in their hands?
Oh, it's becoming a hazard of people walking into traffic.
Right.
There was, I can't remember if it was ABC News. There was something there. It was one of these tragedies. I don't know if there was the ones in Yosemite. Then there was one in another state. I can't remember if it was Idaho or Iowa. It's some national park there where a lady, same thing, fell to her death.
Well, there was in the spring of this year, there was another death in Yosemite by a teenager from Israel that was on the edge of, I think it was Nevada Falls, and he was trying to get a selfie, and he slipped and fell to his death. My point, I guess I'm making, is that cell phones and selfies can be hazardous to your health.
Yes.
Which is a little humorous jab at, because I'm not aware of many people that have lost their lives trying to take a picture with a DSLR.
Right. I think the only image I could think of, Nikon made this famous super wide angle lens once.
You mean not a fisheye?
It could have been, it was
like a 4 millimeter. Is that the 4 millimeter?
It was,
one?
The element was like probably 8. It's like you would get your feet in it. So you would need an image like that to get all of you on a DSLR. You figure, okay, you don't even have to autofocus. I'm going to get myself in focus. Where selfies, everywhere I go, people are, that's what they do. You go to a bar and people are out having fun. They're all taking selfies. Hopefully that is your wife you're with,
Exactly.
But
I got some stories about that. I mean, I was working downtown in an unnamed city at an unnamed time, and I was taking some promotional photography for a client, and there was a restaurant, and there was a very busy restaurant, and I had one of the ladies got up and said, make sure you don't get my friend and I in this picture because we're not supposed to be here. I said, okay, no problem.
Yeah.
So anyway, we digress.
Yeah.
But cell phones are ubiquitous in terms of availability, and the old adage is true. What's the best camera? The one you have
on you.
On you. And I've taken a lot of photos that have been good photos with smartphones.
Yeah, I have some photos that when my parents were still alive, it was one of the last times they were together, and I forgot to bring my camera, and I had my iPhone with me, so I used my iPhone.
And that's a perfect.
That's the thing. So it is the best camera you have with you. The one interesting thing now that the iPhone and the Google phones, the Androids, because I think that's basically, I don't think Microsoft is going to make a big hit with I don't even know if they still produce it.
No, I don't think so.
But it's these apps now what you can do with raw images. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing that more and more, where people are just doing, videos and shots. And again, it depends what media you're going to be using it for. If you're going to be just posting it on Instagram and Facebook or some of these, even if you're a blogger and you use Tumblr or something like that, for the screen, that's perfect.
It doesn't get any better.
And if you get a decent print, I mean, you have everything with you. I'm cracking up sometimes anymore. I was doing a shoot up in Fresno last Saturday with my friend Cindy and her friend Christine. And as I'm setting up my lights, I'm testing this, they're over there taking selfies. As they're taking a selfie, they come up to me and they ran this filter that smoothed out their skin. Mm-hmm. And they say, is this too much? And I go, yeah, it's a little too much. And they go back and redo it. Oh, that looks better. And oh, cool. It's like, can you do that with us? And, we're talking, blah, ha, ha. Click of a button, it's posted already up on Instagram.
We live in an Instagram era.
It's that instant gratification. So for most people, if even you're a street photographer, if you have your smartphone out with you, if you're doing an event, you may be posting it right away immediately.
And for web and phone consumption, that's a perfect tool for that.
Right. Where if you have your DSLR, unless you have some device that you're going to send it wirelessly and then maybe shoot a JPEG of it and get it uploaded right away, you have more bulk with you.
Right. And you're more visible. And for street photography, you want to be
as less
invisible as possible. Right.
Yeah. Another hazard is, I was thinking too, you're right. If you're out, let's say you're out in the Serengeti and there's this lion out there and you want to get the sunset with the last rays of light falling on them. Well, usually you need like a 400 2.8
or a 4000 in my case.
you could do it with an iPhone, but you're going to be very close and he may need a snack for the evening. So
right.
That, but that also goes to, what was it? It was in Yellowstone.
Oh, yes.
The guy that was playing with the bison. Mm. And then you get people around taking the pictures of it. So I look at sometimes having too much of a convenience can be a little bit hazard.
Well, it's the wide angle nature, right? Because, many photographers have said, I don't own a telephoto lens. I use my legs. I walk closer. Well, that's great. Unless there's a cliff in front of you or a lion in front of you.
Yes.
I get that. But so if you're doing nature, wildlife, nighttime photography, or low light photography, or if you want a nice bouquet, probably not the best tool for that. But on the other hand, if you're taking pictures of landscapes or cityscapes or just life photography, Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. And it's also not as difficult to learn. And all these apps that come with the cell phones now are wonderful. You can add filters and, just look at Facebook now or Instagram now. And there's all kinds of filters. There's an entire industry about the selfie, right? Right. Yeah. Selfie sticks, which to photographers that are serious about their work, that they've invested all this time and money and in equipment and training, and they go to a place and the tour bus shows up at a famous place like Tunnel View at Yosemite, and you're all set up and they see you with a camera and they say, hey, could you take our photograph? Or, you spend all day, you should be charging $5 a couple, and you make more money doing that, taking pictures with their cell phone than you do.
Exactly.
But that's where it's going.
Yeah.
And that's something I'd like to talk about in the future is photography, because of the cell phone, is so widespread now that there are areas that are banning cameras, or tripods, or restricting or prohibiting photography in some form or fashion. And that's a growing trend.
Yeah, I think in some cities, if you show up and you plop down a tripod, if you don't have
the permit,
you're going to get harassed or probably fined. And it could be because of the post 9/11 world we're in. It's just, I've even heard it in parks. There's a guy on YouTube. I was watching, he had an interesting video, and I was looking for a new softbox, and he rated him. He did a good job. And him and his wife's really pretty, and they'll go out to the southern deserts by, I wish I could remember his name, San Diego area. And he's testing, these softboxes. Mm-hmm. And his reason why he liked some, how fast they collapse. Because even out there, if a ranger comes by, it's like, do you have a permit?
Right.
And it's like, well, no, do I need one? And they're like, well, yeah. And even though the reasoning is you're using a national park to make money. Well, you could get into the conversation. Well, my tax dollar goes to pay for it anyhow. But either way, they're cracking down if you show up with a tripod, or you're going to say you're going to photograph, which that happened to me, not in Sequoia, but up above Shaver Lake, at that park you get into, it's not quite in Yosemite, it's the Sierra. And I was going into the park, and the guy, what are you guys going to do? And I was with my friend. It's one of the images I just ended up putting it up in the show up in Fresno. And she said, oh, we're going to take pictures. And as soon as she said that, he was like, okay, it's this much.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't know if he just said it's going to be this much, or as soon as we said photography, he changed his tone.
Really?
And I was like,
Well, and you can, and partially anyway, blame the cell phone for that, because they are
everywhere.
You're right, everywhere. And at times they can be distracting or annoying.
Oh yeah. Especially if let's say you're at a park. You're up the day just for a simple thing. There's mama bear and her little babies. Everybody wants to take that picture. Well, you're going to antagonize that creature that may be docile. But if you get too much close to that baby bear, then you have problems with people being attacked by the wild animals. Then they go, the bear went crazy. Well, no, the bear didn't go crazy. You were crazy enough to go up with your wide angle cell phone lens and try to
stick it in its face
and probably even take a selfie while you're doing it at the same time.
Okay. So that was the image that happened in Yellowstone, is a guy was trying to take a selfie with a bison, and the bison didn't take kindly to it. Obviously, maybe the bison was trying to enforce the permit law or whatever, but he injured the photographer.
Yeah.
And I was in Yellowstone, and it's getting worse, but I was there, 5 years ago now, the last time I was there. I took I started taking pictures of people trying to take pictures of wildlife with their cell phones because they would get closer and closer and closer. And I just knew that that elk or that bison was going to lower their head and butt them into tomorrow. It never happened, thankfully, but yeah, I mean, it does happen.
It does happen.
But so that's the limitation of that cell phone, is that you got to get close to your subject.
It's going to be interesting in the future as Google and Apple, and it's good competition. It's good. Where are they going to keep pushing this to? Because they've so far exceeded the point and shoot digital cameras.
Yeah, point and shoots. Now that there is a stake in the heart of point and shoots.
Yeah, and it's sometimes when I can't remember who it was. They pulled one. I think it was my friend Leo. I just looked at him, but he still had a flip phone, and I go, Leo, I'm going to break your phone one of these days. And don't take it as being mean. You need to get into the modern age because you don't need that and that.
Right.
Because I took out, at the time I had the 5. I said, this will outdo both of those right now. And he goes, oh, no, that's too complicated for me. And I'm like, save you're taking two different things devices, now. Right. That device, that old digital camera now, this is pretty much almost succeeded. So it's going to be interesting with apps, because you're right. What you can do with RAW, how that's going to keep pushing that industry.
Right.
Because that industry basically killed the point and shoot.
Point and shoot, right. And the software manipulation behind the scenes is where cell phones are making the biggest strides. I saw a demonstration a year ago of a camera that could take an image and have multiple focus points stacked within the image, and you take it and unpack it with the software, and you could set your focus points. You could have everything in focus, or in other words, you had complete control of the depth of field and the focus throughout the depth of the image with a single frame, regardless of your settings. And that's where we're going. And, how many times have you shot that photograph and it's been slightly out of focus, and, you try to sharpen it and you give up and say, I can't do it. Well, there is software, artificial intelligence is coming that will sharpen that image or salvage that image. That same technology is going to propel smartphones and cell phones, cameras for a long time.
Yes. I could see that I can't remember what company they may not be around anymore. They made this little box camera. Was it Lumen? And it would take these, it was almost like a series of images. So you could go back and post and determine your focus point.
Oh, I remember those. Yes.
It came out, it kind of had a little splash. It didn't go anywhere, but I think somebody bought them out. But they were kind of a little ahead of its time, where, okay, here's this image here. And they had like a scene. Oh, here's this person. We'll focus on them. Then your background was out of focus.
Right.
Oh, but what if you wanted your background in focus? And so it was kind of interesting. So the only thing I could think it's doing, when you click the shutter, it's just taking a series of images, different focus points.
The precursor to focus stacking.
Mm-hmm.
Of today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so in post, you had this image, and it was almost like looking at a video. You would just go back in and
right. And they're doing that with software. I mean, in the beta testing now, I'm sure we'll be seeing that in the near future. So again, carry both. Carry your DSLR,
yes.
Carry your cell phone and use them, and shrug off the snide comments about using a cell phone for your photography. They're great.
Yeah.
If you understand their limitations.
Exactly. It's like anything in life. You got to understand the limitations of this.
Right.
It's just like if you're buying a high-end camera, or not, you could buy a high-end camera, but you buy a variable zoom. then you wonder, well, how come I don't have the nice, pretty bouquet like this person? Well,
now we're talking about 2.8,
right.
1.8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to know the limitations of that variable zoom.
And you have to know what you want in the end. Well, what is the end product? What are you trying to produce? And then go find the tool that helps you best helps you accomplish that.
Yeah. See, in my next rig, my future rig that I want the GFXR Fuji with the XT2 or 3 backup.
And a new computer and a bigger hard drive.
And the iPhone XS as my number 3 go-to camera.
Right.
And I'll be happy. I could cover everything. I'll just be very poor.
Well, at least until 2021. Yeah. Now there'll be something else.
They'll be like, well, now I want that. Oh, it's got 200 megapixel medium format camera. Yeah. So the nutshell,
right.
People have to know what they want.
Exactly.
Oh, great. That was a great conversation.
So where do we find you?
I'm on AvilaStudios.com. Hopefully it's still up. I have to do some tweaks to the WordPress template. There's been updates.
I see.
And any of you who've ever used WordPress, when there are updates, you cross your fingers.
Amen.
So far, I checked yesterday. Everything was good. I'm going to do some different tweaks to the template, but it's going to be late night, and I'm going to make sure there was a backup. So,
smart.
And then, of course, on Instagram at Tony Avila 64 on Instagram, and of course, I've created the webpage for the Aperture Priority podcast on Facebook. Feel free to leave comments. And how about you, Joe?
Well, you can find my work and my blog at brightangelimages.com. And people ask me, what is this Bright Angel? Well, that's actually my last name. That is the meaning of my last name. So I'll just leave it at that. And then Bright Angel Images on Facebook, Bright Angel _images on Instagram. And that's where you can find me.
Oh, great. So another great show, and we survived the Lucky 13. And let's leave off to open up that aperture and let some of that creative light in.
Aperture Priority is an Avila Studios production. For more information on what Avila Studios has to offer, please visit us on the World Wide Web at avilastudios.com.